The wind that morning tasted like home. Pine sap and river mist, except it carried something else too, something metallic and wrong. I'd been gone 3 years, long enough to forget the sharp bend in the road, where the valley opened up like a secret, but not long enough to expect a chain stretched across my driveway. Heavy steel links glinted in the sunlight, padlocked tight, with a brand new sign bolted to a post that definitely hadn't been there before. Private community, no trespassing. For a moment, I just stood there, boots sinking into the gravel my great-grandfather had laid himself in 1923, listening to the echo of birds and the quiet thrum of anger rising in my chest. Someone had claimed my land, my family's land, and that's when I heard the click of heels and the purr of an expensive engine behind me. A white Range Rover eased to a stop, and out stepped a woman who looked like she'd been pulled straight from a luxury home magazine. Platinum bob, pressed blazer, and a clipboard gripped like a weapon. Her perfume hit me before her words did. "Excuse me," she said with that nasal sweetness only certain types of people perfect. "This area is for residents only. You can't just wander up private property." I turned slowly, still taking in the absurdity of it. "Pretty sure I'm standing on my own driveway," I said, tapping the chain. Her smile tightened, the kind that hides irritation behind practiced politeness. "Sir, this road is part of the Whispering Pines estates now. The Homeowners Association manages all access." Whispering Pines. They'd renamed my valley. I almost laughed, but the sound caught somewhere between disbelief and fury. She shifted her stance, heels crunching gravel. "If you're lost, the highway's 2 miles back," she added. That was the moment the smell of pine faded completely, replaced by the bitter scent of trespass, hers, not mine. "My name's Karen Holt," she continued, thrusting the clipboard toward me like a badge. "I'm the HOA president." I didn't take it. "I'm Mark Rowan," I said, "and I own this valley, from the ridge to the river bend." Her eyes flickered, a quick calculation behind the smile. "I think you're mistaken. These properties were all purchased legally." I crouched by the chain, brushed the dust off a marker stone still embedded in the ground. My great-grandfather had carved our initials there nearly a century ago. "You see that?" I said quietly. "Rowan, 1923, this isn't your cul-de-sac fantasy. It's my family's home." Her tone sharpened. "If you continue to cause disturbance, I'll have to call security." Somewhere nearby, a lawnmower droned, and the faint laughter of kids drifted from behind one of the new mansions. The valley that used to echo with coyotes and creek water now hummed with sprinklers and air conditioners. I felt like a ghost in my own story. I straightened and met her stare. "Go ahead. Call whoever you want. I'm not going anywhere." She did call. Within minutes, a rent-a-cop in a Navy SUV rolled up, lights flashing for effect. He looked uncertain, caught between authority and embarrassment, as Karen explained that I was refusing to leave private property. I handed him my driver's license and deed copy, always kept it in the glove compartment. Sentimental habit more than anything. His brow furrowed as he scanned it. "Ma'am," he said, "this shows he owns parcel A through D, including the road." Karen's cheeks reddened. "That can't be right. The HOA maintains that road." "Maintenance," I said, "and doesn't mean ownership." The guard mumbled something about needing to check records and backed down, leaving Karen fuming in the dust of her own confidence. She jabbed a finger toward me. "This isn't over," she said. "We have standards here. You can't just move back in and start. Whatever it is people like you do." I almost asked what people like me meant, but she'd already spun on her heel and stormed off toward her car. As I watched her taillights vanish up the ridge, the silence returned, thick and strange. My cabin sat 1/2 mile down the trail, hidden among aspens that still remembered me. I unlatched the chain, dragged it aside, and started walking. Each step kicked up memories. My father teaching me to chop wood, my mother humming by the porch swing, summer storms that rattled the tin roof. But nostalgia couldn't mask what I saw when I reached the clearing. The cabin still stood, though someone had nailed a notice of code violation to the door. The porch railings were gone, the path overgrown, and tire tracks cut deep into the mud near the creek. I peeled the notice off. Goyer Whispering Pines, unpermitted structure, non-compliance fee, $10,500. That night, I built a fire inside. Same old stone hearth, same creak of the floorboards. The place smelled of dust and betrayal. Through the cracked window, I could see the glow of mansion lights dotting the hills like artificial stars. The valley used to be dark, quiet, alive. Now it buzzed faintly with Wi-Fi and security cameras. I sat there thinking about Karen's smug face and the chain across my road, about how easily a few signatures and fences had rewritten history. But ownership runs deeper than paperwork. It's in the soil, the trees, the river that knows your name. By morning I had a plan. First thing, I drove into town to the county records office. The clerk recognized the Rowan name. Small-town memories die hard, and within minutes she pulled up digital maps confirming what I already knew. The HOA had expanded without ever purchasing easement rights. Every house beyond the old timberline technically stood on my property's access route. "Looks like they built their fancy gate on your land," she said, half amused. "Want us to flag it?" "Not yet," I said. "Let's give them enough rope to hang themselves." When I got back, Karen was waiting, flanked by two board members in pastel polos who looked like they'd never lifted anything heavier than a golf club. She started in before I even stepped out of the truck. "Mr. Rowan, we've decided you need to remove that old cabin. It's an eyesore and not compliant with community aesthetics." Her words slid over me like static. "You mean my great-grandfather's hand-built log cabin?" I asked. "The one that's older than all your houses combined?" "Exactly," she said brightly, as if agreeing with me made it reasonable. "We can help you find a contractor to clear it. It'll raise property values for everyone." I laughed then, a slow, genuine laugh that seemed to confuse them. "Karen," I said, stepping closer, "I think you should check your property lines before giving me advice." She held her ground, but her eyes darted nervously toward the board members. "We know exactly where they are." "Good," I said, "because when you built that gate, you crossed 10 feet into my lot. And when you dug the sewer line for those estates, you cut through my creek bed." Their smiles faltered. "That's impossible," one of them muttered. "We had permits." I tossed a folded survey map at their feet. "County stamped," I said. "See for yourself." The color drained from Karen's face, but she rallied with remarkable stubbornness. "We'll have our legal team review this." "Do that," I said. "And while you're at it, tell your landscapers to stop mowing my meadow." That night the valley felt different, like it was listening. The wind through the aspens sounded almost like laughter, soft but certain. I knew the fight was only beginning, but for the first time since returning, I felt at home again. The next week, the valley turned into a stage, and Karen made herself the star. I woke one morning to find a fresh sign hammered into the edge of my driveway: "Unauthorized occupant, subject to removal." She wasn't just doubling down. She was building an entire narrative. The HOA newsletter, someone had slipped a copy into my mailbox called "Me a Squatter, Attempting to Reclaim Defunct Property." The language would have been laughable if it hadn't been. Accompanied by a $10,000 non-compliance fine stapled to my door. $10,000 for living in my own cabin. I half expected her to declare the sky above the valley an HOA amenity next. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I spent those days collecting evidence, photos, maps, old deeds, even black and white aerial shots from the 1950s that showed our family fence lines running exactly where that cursed gate now stood. My father's name was in those records, and his father's before him. The ink faded, but the ownership clear. I sent digital copies to my attorney in Denver, a quiet man named Jacob Price, who specialized in property law and had a reputation for dismantling overreaching HOAs. When I called, he listened patiently and said, "They're bluffing. People like that always are. We'll remind them what boundaries mean." Karen didn't wait for legal paperwork. She escalated. 3 days later, I caught her standing at the tree line with 2 men from the HOA Compliance Committee. They were measuring, marking, muttering about unauthorized structures. I stepped out onto the porch, coffee in hand. "You need something?" I asked. Karen straightened, adopting her favorite tone. authority mixed with condescension. Mr. Rowan, we've documented multiple violations, unregistered dwelling, improper fencing, and environmental hazards. If you don't vacate within 7 days, we'll proceed with removal. Removal, I repeated slowly, letting the word hang in the air. Of me or the cabin? Both, she said crisply. This community values order. And who authorized this order? She lifted her clipboard. The board, I smiled. That's cute. But the board doesn't have jurisdiction here. Her expression flickered. We'll see about that. She turned to leave, but I called after her. Make sure your legal team brings a topographic map next time. It'll save you some embarrassment. The men with her avoided my eyes as they followed her back up the path. That night, I set up cameras around the property. Call it paranoia, but I knew power-hungry people rarely stopped at words. Sure enough, a few nights later I caught headlights creeping down the trail after midnight. 2 trucks, engines off, coasting on neutral. I stayed inside, lights off, watching through the window as a group of men, same HOA contractors, started unloading equipment near my creek. They were trying to install drainage pipes, probably part of their fancy landscaping project. Except they were trespassing. Again, I stepped out quietly, flashlight in hand. Evening, gentlemen, I said. They froze like deer. Did Karen send you? One of them stammered. We were told this was common property. Common to who? I asked. The HOA, he said weakly. You got that in writing? Silence. I raised the flashlight beam, catching the fear in their eyes. Get off my land, I said, voice low. Now. They packed up fast and disappeared into the night. By morning, Karen was at my gate again, this time with a police officer in tow. He threatened my workers, she said, gesturing dramatically. The officer, a young guy who looked more tired than convinced, asked for my side. I handed him a flash drive with the security footage. He watched it on his tablet right there in the truck. His expression changed from polite neutrality to quiet disbelief. Ma'am, he said finally, this video shows your men entering his property at 11:48 p.m. without consent. Karen flushed. That's not the point. He intimidated them, the officer sighed. Ma'am, you can't accuse someone of intimidation when they're defending their property. I suggest you and your HOA settle this civilly. She spun on me after he left, fury twisting her features. You think you can hide behind your land forever? The HOA has lawyers. So do I said. Better ones. For the next few weeks, the valley simmered with tension. Some homeowners avoided eye contact when they passed me on the trail. Others whispered apologies when Karen wasn't around. I didn't blame them. They'd been sold a dream, not a feud. Still, I noticed cracks forming in her control. The board members started missing meetings. The newsletters grew defensive. And then came the letter that turned everything upside down. Jacob called me one afternoon. You might want to sit down for this, he said. We found something. Turns out, when the developers built the estates, they'd filed an easement request that was never approved. The county had rejected it because my great-grandfather's deed specifically prohibited transfer without family consent, meaning every road, gate, and sewer line the HOA installed was technically an illegal encroachment. So what does that mean? I asked. Jacob chuckled. It means, Mark, they're all living on borrowed ground. And you're the landlord. I could have gone for immediate legal action, but revenge, I decided, is best served bureaucratic. We drafted a formal notice to the HOA, politely informing them that continued trespass would incur daily fines under property law, retroactive to the date of construction. Jacob sent it certified mail. Karen received it during their monthly board meeting, surrounded by the very people who'd once applauded her. Witnesses later told me she went pale, then red, then started shouting something about fraudulent documents and small-town corruption. But truth has a way of cutting through noise. Within 48 hours, panic rippled through the community. Some homeowners called me directly, voices trembling, asking if their deeds were invalid. I assured them their houses weren't in danger, as long as they stopped letting Karen speak for them. That night, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. It was her, Mr. Rowan, she said, voice tight. We need to talk. About what? About resolving this. Misunderstanding. Which part? I asked. The trespassing, the fake fines, or the illegal construction? A pause. We can reach an arrangement. I already have one, I said. It's called ownership. She hung up. The next day, I found tire marks by my gate again, but this time they weren't from her Range Rover. Someone had spray-painted Valley Thief across my cabin door. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it reeked of desperation. Karen was losing her grip, and everyone could feel it. The once pristine community started fracturing, neighbors arguing, for sale signs quietly appearing on manicured lawns. People realized the HOA wasn't protecting them. It was suffocating them. Jacob filed the formal claim a week later. The county scheduled a hearing. Karen tried to delay it, citing administrative confusion, but the judge wasn't sympathetic. Meanwhile, I began restoring the cabin, new beams, fresh stain, a rebuilt porch swing. Each nail I drove felt like reclaiming a piece of history. Sometimes hikers would stop by, curious about the story. I'd just smile and say, it's an old valley with new lessons. When the hearing finally came, Karen showed up in her usual armor, designer suit, pearls, righteous indignation. I wore my work jacket and boots. She had a lawyer from the city. I had Jacob and a stack of documents that could have built a bonfire. The judge listened as Karen tried to argue that the HOA had implied ownership through maintenance and community investment. Jacob countered calmly, maintenance does not grant title, permission does. And my client never granted any. Then he slid a large, framed photo across the table. My great-grandfather standing beside the original gate in 1923. Same location, same rock markers, still visible today. The judge studied it, then looked at Karen. Ms. Holt, he said, this seems clear. The HOA constructed barriers and imposed regulations on land they did not legally own. That's trespass and misrepresentation. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The ruling was immediate. The HOA was ordered to remove all signage, pay restitution for unauthorized use of my land, and cover legal fees. Karen's personal liability was still pending. She stormed out of the courtroom, reporters snapping photos as she shoved past them. I stood outside afterward, sunlight glinting off the courthouse steps, and felt the weight of generations lift. My valley was mine again, not just on paper, but in truth. The weeks that followed felt like watching a storm clear after years of fog. Karen disappeared from the valley. Word was, she'd been removed from the HOA board after a unanimous vote. Some said she moved back to the city to pursue other ventures. But rumor had it she was buried in lawsuits from angry homeowners who blamed her for everything. The fines, the illegal gate, the false promises. I didn't celebrate, not openly at least. Truth be told, I just wanted my valley back the way it was before all the noise. The road up to the cabin, once strangled by private property signs, was open again. No chains, no barriers. Just the crunch of gravel under my boots and the whisper of pine branches swaying overhead. Sometimes I'd stop halfway up and take a deep breath, feeling the air cold and sharp in my lungs, the same air my great-grandfather once breathed. His old pickaxe still hung by the porch, rusted and cracked, but it felt like a symbol now. The land had fought back, and it had chosen to remember its roots. A few of the mansion owners stayed. They weren't all bad people, just misled by someone who craved control more than community. One afternoon, a man named Douglas, grey hair, suit jacket even on weekends, knocked on my door. "Mr. Rowan," he said almost shyly, "I wanted to apologize. I bought into this place because it felt peaceful. I didn't realize peace had been stolen from someone else." I nodded. "You weren't the only one fooled," he offered a handshake. "If there's ever anything we can do..." "Respect the valley," I said simply. "That'll be enough." Word spread. Slowly, the community began changing. The HOA was dissolved within a month, replaced by a cooperative of residents who actually lived here, who understood that land isn't about rules and dues. It's about stewardship. Together, we took down the old signposts, filled in the ditches, and reopened the trail that led to the waterfall at the northern ridge. It hadn't seen a footprint in years. The sound of rushing water was like a hymn echoing through the trees. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the ridge, painting everything in gold, I sat on my rebuilt porch swing with a cup of coffee and watched the valley glow. Deer moved through the meadow below, and a hawk circled high above the tree line. Peace, real peace. Not the kind written into HOA bylaws or sold in brochures, the kind that grows wild and untamed like the pines themselves. My phone buzzed on the railing. A new email from Jacob, subject line, final settlement, paid in full. I opened it and smiled. The HOA had officially transferred all restitution, enough to restore every inch of the valley and then some. I closed the laptop, leaned back and listened to the silence. But peace has a funny way of attracting noise. A month later, I saw a new SUV crawling up the road, silver, spotless, out of place. It stopped by the gatepost, where the old private community sign had once stood. A woman stepped out, clipboard in hand. For a second, my heart froze, but it wasn't Karen. She was younger, friendlier looking, eyes wide with curiosity. "Hi," she called. "I'm from the county survey department. Just checking property lines for the upcoming map update." I grinned. "You'll find they're right where they've always been," she laughed. "That's what I like to hear." As she drove off, I glanced up at the ridge. The last light of sunset caught the old cabin roof, making it glow like fire against the mountainside. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't defending my home. I was part of it again. Sometimes I think about Karen. I wonder if she ever understood what she was really fighting for. Power, respect, control. Maybe she thought ownership meant domination. But out here, ownership means responsibility. And when you forget that, the land remembers for you. A few months later, I got a letter. No return address, just my name in sharp handwriting. Inside was a single note: "You won." No signature, no threat. Just those two words. Maybe it was her way of admitting defeat. Maybe it was closure. Either way, I burned the letter in the cabin's old stove and watched the smoke curl upward through the chimney, disappearing into the same sky my ancestors once worked beneath. Now, when travelers or hikers wander into the valley, they sometimes ask if I'm the guy from that HOA story. I smile and say, "Yeah, that was me." They always want to know what it felt like to fight back, to win. I tell them the truth. It wasn't about winning. It was about remembering who this place belonged to before anyone tried to fence it in. At night, I still hear the wind pushing through the trees, carrying echoes of the past. My father's laugh, the creak of the old barn door, the faint ring of a hammer against stone from nearly a century ago. The valley has stories older than all of us. I just made sure it could keep telling them. Sometimes I sit by the fire and look out across the dark fields where those mansions once stood, lights flickering like distant stars. Some sold, some stayed, but all learned the same truth, that no matter how much concrete you pour or how many rules you write, you can't own the soul of the land. And if you drive through the valley now, you'll see a new sign at the entrance. It doesn't say private property or no trespassing. It says, "Welcome to Rowan Valley, respect the land and it will respect you." That's how peace feels when you finally earn it.